Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Today, we're here to talk about the latest updates of ecoinvent, so with the version 3.12. Throughout the webinar, please feel free to write your questions in the Q&A section here in Teams, so we'll be able to collect your questions and answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation. First of all, of course, we would like to present ourselves. So my name is Chiara De Grandis. I am a sustainability consultant and also take care of communications. Today with me is Conrad. He's also a sustainability consultant and researcher. We both work for GreenDelta. So GreenDelta, for those who don't know, is the developer of openLCA. Conrad will be the main speaker because he worked on the implementation of ecoinvent within openLCA. But before leaving the word to him, I would like to take a look at the agenda that we are going to see today together. So we'll start with taking a look at what's new in ecoinvent 3.12, of course, so especially compared to previous versions. We'll see how to get ecoinvent for openLCA through our marketplace openLCA Nexus. And then we'll see a practical showcase in openLCA. So we'll see how we as GreenDelta implemented ecoinvent in our free software. And we'll see how it looks in openLCA. Finally, again, there will be a Q&A session. And again, please feel free to write your questions in the Q&A section. Okay, I think that's it. So Conrad, I'll leave the floor to you.
Okay, hello everyone. And before we directly jump into the openLCA software to show you ecoinvent live inside the software, we will pick some highlights from the content update of ecoinvent 3.12, but we will not go too much into detail because ecoinvent made already a nice webinar to their new content. And when you go on the support website from ecoinvent 3.12, you will find in the beginning here the Watch the Introduction to ecoinvent 3.12 webinar. On that page, you also find the most important document, which is the report of changes, which reports everything which was improved, updated, added to 3.12. I will later also show you where you find it directly inside openLCA. So I just picked some highlights to speak about. Here again, when you go on the support website from ecoinvent version 3.12, here you find the report of changes. You also find the correspondence file. So inside this Excel file, you can see which processes got updates, which got removed, which were not changed at all. And sometimes useful is also the database overview file, especially when you don't have an ecoinvent license yet and you want to see what is actually inside ecoinvent, which locations, which flows, which processes. Okay, so here, this is, as I said before, a slide directly taken from the ecoinvent webinar to show you that at the moment ecoinvent 3.12 has about 26,500 unit processes. Compared to version 3.11, this is roughly 1,200, 1,300 processes more. But on top of that, of course, also other processes were not added but updated. And ecoinvent is one of the few databases that covers in principle all sectors. Of course, some sectors like waste or chemicals or energy, they usually have a very high coverage, whereas maybe other sectors like the ICT, for example, is a famous one. They are unfortunately still underrepresented. But so far, this is already good to have so many sectors in that database. Just to mention a few updates for 3.12. The fuels got some updates to the reference year 2023 with offshore and onshore operations. Then there were new geography datasets added, so new processes added in 18 new geographies for natural gas liquids. Also, as every year, of course, the electricity markets got updates. So every year, this is shifted by 1 year further, roughly. And there's electricity markets like China, US, Canada, which have the reference year 2023. The EU typically is 3 years behind, 2022 now, and residual mixes are from 2024. So this shifts every year by 1 year, obviously. And there was a significant update in the regionalization of chemicals and plastics. So as you can see here in their graphics, from 3.9 to 3.12, roughly you have an 6 to 10% more data sets per version per year added. But this year you can see in the 3.12 here for the Asian and for the Americas region that there was a big jump from 3.11 to 3.12. So the data sets in these regions nearly tripled. Waste also got updates with more European supply chains, some corrections, and also for the EPD waste indicators, some internal consistency updates. And if you want all the details, go to the webinar, or I recommend to go to the report of changes document. This year, the LCIA methods from ecoinvent got no update, so there was not a new impact method added. Nevertheless, some impact methods like EF and IPCC, they got slight corrections of some characterization factors. You will most likely see not any differences. So these were only slight corrections also in some flows which are hardly used throughout the database. But it's always good, of course, to keep the methods and the ecoinvent version up to date, to always have the newest corrections, because there will be always some fixes done. And how to get ecoinvent 3.12? Most of you, of course, will know it over our openLCA Nexus. Maybe there's also some visitors of this webinar who don't know it. So here is the web address. You can here find the ecoinvent database, and when you scroll down you can also see the prices here. And since 2026, so since this January, ecoinvent updated their prices slightly, but the good news is our users still get the exact same prices as originally from ecoinvent. So there's when you buy the license over Nexus, you don't have additional costs, but of course you have the advantage that you directly have the openLCA Solca files for use in openLCA. So of course this is then an advantage. And also good news for all our users who have a yearly license or who want to purchase a yearly license, because also yearly license holders have now access to the download section of EcoQuery, meaning you have now also access to the EcoSpol 2 files. This is the raw data files from ecoinvent. Most users, when you are not a developer or when you don't have your own tool where you are working on, most of the users will never use these EcoSpol files, because you need to transform this data into your format and so on, clean it. But this news is, in my opinion, good, for example, for Brightway and Activity browser users, because they need this access to the EcoSpol files, because Brightway will directly import the EcoSpol. And that means if you obtain a license over Nexus, you can still use your Brightway and Activity browser, but on top you will also get the openLCA databases. And maybe then also Brightway and Activity browser users start exploring openLCA. That would be very nice. So last but not least, before we come to the live demonstration in openLCA, some points to the quality control of ecoinvent 3.12 in openLCA, what we always do after we have implemented it in our software. You also find these graphs inside our report. So on Nexus, freely available. You don't need to have a license. You can find the implementation report for ecoinvent and openLCA. There is also these figures. And what you can see here is the relative difference of a calculation inside openLCA with the official echo query results from ecoinvent. So this is the relative difference in percentage for all 26,500 processes in ecoinvent and for all impact categories of EF 3.1. And as you can see, you see nothing. The reason is because these relative differences are below 0.3%. You will not see any difference here, which is good news. So it means the implementation yields exactly the same values as an echo query. We can even zoom in. Here now the y-axis is from 0 to 1%, and you will spot some points which are in the range of 0.3%. It doesn't even mean that we have a difference of 0.3%, because I don't want to go into detail, but this has to do how we calculate it, because in that case we calculated the whole ecoinvent database at once. So we did a full matrix inversion to calculate all processes at once. And because of numerical reasons how you calculate sparse matrices, there is some slight differences, but you don't have these differences when you do a calculation in openLCA, because there you calculate one process or one product system, and you will always get the exact same value, even without this 0.3% difference, which is already negligible small. You can even plot it in the log scale, and here plot the relative difference, the relative absolute difference, and you will see that our differences are in the order of 10 to the power of -8. So very, very small. Also some points to uncertainty in ecoinvent 3.12, because we always get a lot of requests sometimes for Monte Carlo simulations and uncertainties in the exchanges from ecoinvent. These uncertainty values inside every exchange in ecoinvent, they have to be taken with care. Of course, if you want to do an uncertainty analysis, it's sometimes better to have uncertainty and to do Monte Carlo simulations than doing none of these at all. But we realized that a lot of uncertainty values in ecoinvent are unreasonably high. So you have about 500,000 exchanges in ecoinvent. From these 500,000 exchanges, less than 1% have a normal distribution of uncertainty. So here this is around 6,000. This is roughly 1% only, but what is plotted here is the coefficient of variation, the sigma over mean, for all these exchanges with a normal distribution. And as you can see here, these values are in the range of 1 million, 10 million, 1 billion, much, much too high. So this is unrealistically high and makes no sense. And because most of these normal distributions have too high coefficient of variation, we decided to remove them, because they anyway make only less than 1% of all uncertainties. Maybe here in the beginning, these could be reasonable values, which are below 10 or below 5, but you cannot set a threshold to say this is reasonable, this is unreasonable. But these high values here and at the end, they are for sure. I think this is more like a systematical mistake of a conversion. For the most of the exchanges in ecoinvent, they have a log normal distribution for the uncertainty. Here is plotted all of them over 600,000. And on the y-axis, the geometric sigma of this log normal distribution. And you can see here is a drastic increase, and they also go up to unreasonably high values. So a value of 1000 or 100 makes no sense for a geometric sigma value. But where can we set here a threshold? And when you zoom in carefully, you will see that here is kind of an artificial plateau. We don't know where this is coming from at a geometric sigma of 4. So we decided to take this value as a threshold and cut everything which is above, which is also less than 1% cutted here. Because otherwise it can happen that in some Monte Carlo simulations you get really high, really wide outliers. We don't know where these effects are coming from. We also know that other tools, like for example Brightway, they also set a threshold, so the user can also change this threshold. We also want to implement it in openLCA, that this threshold can be set. I don't know how, for example, Zima Pro is doing it. Maybe they are not cutting away these unreasonable values, but just to let you know. This is the only thing we change, but inventories of the processes, values, descriptions are of course never changed. So here the threshold at around 4. And now we switch into openLCA for the practical showcase. Okay, so now I want to show you directly inside openLCA how ecoinvent database is imported, how it looks like, what we have added as additional features, and so on. Some things the visitors might know already from the webinar I gave a year ago for the version 3.11. So of course some features they still stay the same, but I will show them also shortly for first-time users, which should be quite quick. So let's start with importing new database from file. You have downloaded the ecoinvent database and it takes just a few seconds. Here you have it. You can directly open it and then you are inside the ecoinvent database. So the import opening just takes a few seconds, and here then you have access to all the processes. So let's search for a process, a hostel in Brazil, a whole building. It's an old process, but I just take this as an example. We run a calculation with the EF 3.1 method. We also want to have normalization and weighting, and we click finish. The first calculation after you open the database will take a few seconds more. Every subsequent calculation in my case takes only like 3 seconds, 4 seconds, because now the database is kind of loaded into the storage. I can show you what I mean. So when I run the same calculation again, it takes only a few seconds and the results will appear. So here it is. We have here the impact analysis where you can see all the impacts. So we have a climate change impact of 3.5 to the power of 10 to the power of 5 kilograms CO2 equivalent. You can also see here the most contributing flows. As you know, you can even set here the 20% limit so that these flows are contributing 80% to climate change and so on. Normalization and weighting, the contribution tree, and so on. Okay, but this is, we don't want to give an openLCA lecture, of course. So let's look into ecoinvent specific things. So you find here the process description. What we add from our side for openLCA is this link here, because otherwise you don't have that link to EcoQuery. So you can open it, log in with your account, and then you are directly in the same data set inside EcoQuery when you, for example, want to compare the results. But as I showed you, they are exactly the same. Yeah. What we also do, which is not done by default from ecoinvent, so all these processes which are completely empty. This is only the case for the cut-off system model, because in the cut-off system model, some flows, they don't have a provider, they don't have a providing process because they come burden-free. And these processes are marked with recycled content cutoff, so we all put them in this folder. Same for the flows here, recycled content cutoff. This is all the flows which make use of these empty providers. This is only the case for cutoff. Also, when you open a flow, maybe we take a flow with more infos like methanol. Here is the product flow. You will also find the cars number here. You can also in openLCA now search for the cars number, and then you get here all methanol flows, not only the elementary flows, also the product flows. And here in the elementary flows, you also have the formula. Now also what is new in 3.12, we have taken all UUID numbers for the flows which are originally from ecoinvent. You can see that here. So the UUID number inside openLCA is this one, and this is the original one from ecoinvent. So for all flows, this is now the same. It was also in the past the same for like 97%, but not for 100% of the flows. This had historical reasons, because sometimes a different database, let's say Agribalis or another database, added a new flow which ecoinvent doesn't have. So we added it to our reference system, but then later maybe ecoinvent added the same flow, so it cannot have the same UUID anymore, because we have that elementary flow already. So this had historical reasons, but to simplify imports of data from other sources, we now made these ref IDs for all flows the same as from ecoinvent, just that you know that. Also, if you want to see the differences of these few flows which before didn't have the same UUID, there's an Excel file in Nexus. Then all impact methods are directly in the database that are provided from ecoinvent. So when you use these impact methods, you will get the exact same results as an eco query. But take in mind that these ecoinvent methods are not regionalized. So you cannot do regionalized calculations with them. For that, you would need the openLCA impact methods. What we also add by ourselves is here these infos which are also provided by ecoinvent, not in the raw data, but in some Excel files, so that you have some infos to the impact method, where the factors are coming from, and so on. Also, for some important methods like the EF method, we added here the normalization and weighting sets, so that you don't have to do that manually, because ecoinvent does not provide them. But this is easy to add. You can also add other normalization and weighting sets as you want. But for EF, we have done that already. Then data quality systems. All processes are connected to the ecoinvent data quality system. And this one also comes with uncertainties. So you can also, if you have no idea of an uncertainty for your exchange, you can use this pedigree approach, the pedigree uncertainty, where from the data quality values you can calculate an uncertainty. But this is then more openLCA related, because this is true for also other databases. But just to show you that here we have these data quality systems inside. Also the other ones, all that we know. This is more for documentation. If you want to have a look inside, like you do an EPD, you can look at the PCR data quality system from the EN 15804 standard, how you rate your data. This is more for documentation. Of course, for your own data, you can also use these ones. What is new in 3.12? We updated a bit the currency rates. So the exchange rates have now the reference year 2024. That means these 8 exchange rates, these are the 8 most traded currencies in the world. So we included the first 8, and these conversion factors to a euro, this one is referenced with the International Monetary Fund tables to the average of the year 2024. So the last year before ecoinvent was released. And you can also, if you want to have all your prices in the database in a different currency than euro, for example US dollar, you can simply here set the US dollar as your reference currency. You have seen now the conversion factor changed to 1 now, and all the other conversion factors are then automatically changed. So now when I do a calculation, LCC, everything will be calculated in US dollar. This is also interesting for the Euro 2005, because all prices in ecoinvent are in Euro 2005. Let's have a look again at this one data set. ecoinvent provides all the prices for the reference product. So here you can see the hostel has a price of 300,000 euro 2005. So this unit is kind of fixed because this currency value Euro 2005, this comes from ecoinvent. Nevertheless, in openLCA there's a nice feature. You can set Euro 2024 as your reference currency. So the conversion factor is 1, obviously. But we have also included the producer price index from Euro 2005. So this conversion factor is roughly 1.49. And what was taken there is all the producer price index changes in industry. So this is a industry producer price index from Eurostat from the reference year 2005 until 2024 as a sum. And then you get this conversion factor. So now, because the reference currency is Euro 2024, when you calculate cost data in ecoinvent, everything will be in Euro 2024. You can also say, okay, I want 2005 as my reference currency, and then everything is calculated with these values as they are provided from ecoinvent. But this is simply conversion factors. You can also change this one by yourself. If you want a different conversion factor to Euro 2015 or to US dollar 2020, you can also add them yourself if you want to. Okay. What else I want to show you? What is new in 3.12 is we have now added to a lot of product flows. This is especially interesting for people who model stoichiometric chemical reactions. Let's look, for example, at the methanol flow again. In the flow properties here, there is the mole flow property now. We added that by ourselves. And here you have directly included the conversion factor. So you can see when I set 1 mole as a reference, you can see 1 mole corresponds to 32 gram. So methanol has a molar mass of 32 gram per mole. These factors here you don't have to change. Typically all the mass is always the reference flow property. But so when you calculate, everything will be in mass because this is set by ecoinvent like that. But it has an advantage. You can make, for example, a synthesis. So don't judge me now on this synthesis. Let's say sodium chloride synthesis. We just plug together chlorine gas and sodium to make table salt or something like that. This one might already exist in the database. Yes. Here we have sodium chloride powder already existing. So let's create a new process. And what you can do now, you can now say, okay, you can now plug in the exact stoichiometric equation. So this must be 2 mole. And then we need chlorine gas. So this is really just an example to show the stoichiometric approach. We need some sodium, basic chemicals here, and instead of converting on a paper everything into mole, you can set here directly mole. And we need 1 mole of chlorine, which is Cl2. And we need 2 mole of sodium, which is 2Na, to get 2 mole of sodium chloride powder. So this would now be stoichiometric, and you don't need to do all the conversions beforehand. And then here usually you have kilograms, but values which are not really transparent, and nobody will know where these values come from. So when you model stoichiometrically, this can be some help. And of course, when you now do a direct calculation, we first have to also set some provider here. By the way, what is a very good check for this, you can click database check linking properties, and then you will see, this process here has missing providers. So we click on it. Here the providers are missing. So let's take the market in Europe. For chlorine, let's take here the European production set. And when you do a direct calculation, of course, this will be now for 2 mole. But you can anytime create a product system and then say, I want everything for 1 kilogram. So if you look at the contribution tree, this was now calculated for 116 gram, which is 2 mole of sodium chloride. But we can just also create a product system, which goes really quick. And then we can say inside the product system, please calculate everything for 1 kilogram. Of course, you also would need to add energy, infrastructure. This is now just an example. Mass 1 kilogram, and then everything is referenced to 1 kilogram. Just to show you that we added to some product flows now also the mole impact, the mole flow property. And yeah, I clicked now on process results, which will show for every process all the results, and they will be loaded on demand. So they were not in the storage before, in the RAM storage. They are now loaded on demand. So usually when you click on the process results, I personally never use it, the loading takes a bit longer. But here the contribution tree, 1 kilogram. Okay. What else? Here when we look at the actors, they are sorted that you can see which one are from ecoinvent and which one not. So when they are from ecoinvent, from the database, they are inside this folder database. But of course, for your own processes, you can anytime create new actors. The source is the same. When they are in the folder database, these sources will come originally from the ecoinvent database. When you right-click usage, you will also see that they are linked to processes. But here's additional folders that we put. So when you want to see the ecoinvent change report, that's a very important file. You can just click it and it's inside the database. So you instantly can open the change report from ecoinvent. Here's also a link to the correspondence file, a link to the database overview, the LCA report with all the impact methods implemented by ecoinvent, and so on. Also here some links to their support and knowledge base, the same for openLCA. If you want to know the link from the openLCA blog, you can simply open it here and it will directly appear, and then you see our news. So here you have some useful links. Okay, the locations, nothing has changed from our side compared to the version before, because we map the locations to our reference system locations, and there we sort them now here in these folders so that they can more easily found. All locations in the country folder, we make sure that the name and the code really follows the ISO 3166 standard here. And also all the locations in subdivisions, we make sure that they also follow this standard, because this is the 3166-2 standard for all the sub-territories of a country. So whenever they have this tag, the name and the code follow exactly this ISO standard. In other folders, of course, electricity grids, there is not a common standard. And here, most of the time, the name and the code from ecoinvent is overtaken. Sometimes we make the code a bit more human-friendly, readable, that the code is not getting too long. Okay, is there anything else? We can have a short look in the openLCA blog, because there we had a changelog for our 3.12 release. It's already a few weeks ago, because this year we released 3.12 just 3 weeks roughly after the official ecoinvent release. And here you find our infos summarized also as a changelog. You also find, of course, the infos in the implementation report on Nexus. Here I showed you already that we added the molar amounts. We updated the costs and the exchange rates and the producer price index to newer values. The flow properties. This is also an important thing. Before we only had it for our EN15804 add-on, but now when you click on a certain flow, let's say methanol, we add it here. You have to scroll down a bit. at the bottom of this flow description, you find all properties that are provided by ecoinvent. So the price, the carbon content, water content, dry mass, wet mass, and the lower heating value, which is often needed in EPDs. So you find this here, and then you can use these values for your own calculations or your own modeling. You don't have to go always then to EcoQuery to get them. You can directly read them here. Okay. I also told you that now all the elementary flow UUIDs are the original ones from ecoinvent. And the other notes here, they were also true for the previous version 3.11. So all validation checks pass the test, so we make sure that there's no errors or something in the database. Also, when you do your own modeling, from time to time do a validation check. Click on right-click validate. I click now on purpose all messages so that you can see it's all green. You see all the checks pass. And if you made a mistake somewhere, it will be most likely detected here. Okay, some processes are sorted into these folders. I can maybe say a few words to the sectors we put, the sector tags we put to all processes. So when you open a process, let's take the hostel again, you will see that every process is tagged here with a sector tag. These sector tags or these sector names come from ecoinvent, and every process has exactly one sector, let's say. And these tags can be used also for grouping of impact results. I will show you. So when you calculate, for example, this process in the settings, you need to have activated under experimental features, enable contributions by tags in results views. When you have activated that, you can do a calculation. Let's do the same one again. And then you click on tags. And then let's say for climate change, so the total impact, we had this already before, it was 3.5 to the 10 to the power of 5 kilogram CO2 equivalent to build this whole hostel. And you can see the contributions because every process in the whole supply chain has a certain sector tag like electricity, heat, fuels, and so on. And here you see the sum of all these tags in the whole product system, in the whole supply chain. And you will then see, you can also right click and export these values, copy them into Excel. And you will see that electricity obviously has the biggest contribution here. Like it's nearly half of the impacts come from the electricity sector. A lot of impacts come from the heat sector. And sometimes this is very nice if you want to group your impact results by sector tags, by sector names. And in the future we will further enhance, I think, these tag results because they are very handy, and you can also add your own tags if you want to, and then these own tags will appear in the results here, in the tag results. Okay, I think this is most of the nodes that are covered. Yes, all flows now contain cars numbers, formulas, and synonyms from ecoinvent, all methods implemented, data quality, the ISO standard for the country and subdivisions, and the uncertainties we mentioned already in the webinar slides. Okay, so I would say we are here at the end. We can go back to our presentation. And for the last slides, I want to highlight our openLCA conference this year in April, on the 22nd and 23rd April, also on the 21st, but this is not a conference day, the 21st of April, we do a lot of trainings. So openLCA trainings, Python and openLCA trainings, social LCA trainings, EPD, and so on. So the 21st of April is like trainings for all conference participants who also want to visit a training before. they can come already on the 21st, and the 22nd and 23rd will be the conference. Same as last year, it will be in the beautiful UFA Fabrik in Berlin. The early bird registration is still open until the 31st of January, so this is tomorrow. And last year we had 154 attendees from 32 countries. We had 58 talks and 25 posters. Here you can see the main hall, let's say. And here is an outside area to chat with all the participants. And the UFA Fabrik is really a nice historical and cultural center in Berlin. It's really beautiful, especially when the weather is also good. And I said already that the trainings are one day before, on the 21st of April. We have now here also in the video the Q&As, because we had with the visitors of the webinar, we had the live Q&As, so they can write the questions into the chat and we answer them. But instead of adding this video here, the answers, because there was not enough time to answer all of this, we put them all in a document. So below this webinar video, you will find a link to this document. We will also put this document into the Nexus, that you can find it where you also find the ecoinvent database, and there you will find the questions and the answers. Okay, so we are at the end, and I say goodbye.